Hello and welcome to the Soul Sync podcast. I'm psychic medium Jason Paul, and it's as lovely as it ever is, my darlings, to have you here with me. Now, this next conversation, I tell you this, it's guaranteed to make you laugh and smile, because I'm speaking to a northern medium called Colin Bray. He's just released his personal autobiography, which is titled The Memoirs of a Stripper's Journey to a Healing Medium. Now, yes, you heard that right. That is a stripper's journey to a healing medium. It's the even the title of the book looks like the kind of book that I would have got drawn to in one of these sorts of bookshops in Soho when I was in my 20s. It's Colin there, standing there with a six-pack that's been airbrushed, and it did make me laugh as soon as I saw the title of the book. Colin comes on to explain some of his journey, which started from humble beginnings in working-class England to the fast-paced world of male stripping. Now, it certainly was a fast-paced world from what Colin told me, and he shares the raw truth of his life experience, the family struggles, heartbreak. We talk about our shared threads and experiences of addiction and what we've noticed in mediumship development, on why people get drawn in to searching for answers. So this is my conversation with northern medium Colin Bray. Now, my darlings, I must tell you firstly, this episode is proudly British. If you were easily offended, do look away, because we are discussing male stripping, so I don't know where you want to look. Colin, welcome, my dear, to the Soul Sync.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the invite. Very pleased to be here and share a few things.
Well, it's very lovely to have you on. Thank you. So, I will begin. You are, a medium. I first came across your lovely self when I was on a course developing my mediumship. And, I have to say, you've come on today because you want to talk about your journey, and you've just released a book. And I have to say, Colin, when I first saw the cover of your book, I thought this is even going to be one of the most unexpected spiritual memoirs I've ever come across, or something that maybe I picked up in Soho in 2007.
Yeah,
but what really struck me was the image. So tell us about you.
Well, many years ago, I'm age 66 now, so as you can see on my book cover, I do look a bit younger. And it all started...
Well, you look very hunky on that. As I said, it was something I thought would be in Soho.
Yeah, well, I've got the actual cover, what I originally did before it went to publishers. I actually did myself. That's the actual image. Can you see it?
I can see it. For anyone listening, honestly, it's like a six-pack. You got your abs out there. It really is what I imagine a Chippendales back in the day, muscly hunk would look like, Colin.
Yeah. So that's what I sent to publishers. And then they sent me a cover back when they'd done it, which is now... It's not the one they sent back, because I turned around and I says, I don't want that. It doesn't even look like me. So they messed about with it. Obviously, they've done a bit of airbrushing on it.
You're not meant to tell us that, Colin.
Well,
you're not meant to tell us this has been airbrushed. I thought that was all you.
I'm the honest person. No, but it is basically me. So
what's jumping out at me straight away, obviously, is the title, The Memoirs of a Stripper's Journey to a Healing Medium. What do you think people assume the book is about when they're first looking at it?
Well, the reason I put that picture on the front is because I see my book as going from one extreme to another, from sex industry, more or less, to a healing medium, which is completely opposite on spectrum, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? So,
well, yes.
And I thought to myself, will that appeal to people? I'm not sure whether it does or not yet. I thought if people see that, especially ladies, they might be drawn to it. That was my first sort of thought.
Well, it's a very good thought. You're thinking like a marketeer, aren't you?
Well, yeah, I were.
Take me back to Rotherham in 1960. What kind of world was you born into?
I was born into a working class family. My dad worked in steelworks. My mother had odd part-time job. But we were brought up in a terraced house. We didn't have a lot of money. But I think that's how things were in them days. You sort of had clothes what you went out in and clothes what you played out in. You didn't have no designer trainers or designer clothes or anything like that. But basically, I mean, I think times were better than what they are now.
Why do you think that is?
Because I feel like everything in the world now is everybody wanting. It's turned into a material world, and I don't know if you'll see that. I mean, I don't know how old you are outside of me, but everything now is money orientated, and I speak about it in my book quite a bit about money. And as you know, as a medium yourself, you don't take any when you pass the spirit world. You not take anything with you, but people get obsessed with building empires and bigger house they can buy, the better it is. And well, let me tell you, I've lived in a big house, a 4-bedroom detached house, and I was no happier in that house. In fact, I was probably more miserable in that house because all you do is you get bigger bills. So, I think really...
Well, I think even just on that point, I think I've actually been my happiest when I had the least money, actually, and I've kind of gone full spectrum. I've grew up with not a lot, very, like you said, there was something about, even though I'm approaching 40 now, the going outside, the being connected, there was even a richness in the TV because there was only 4 channels, there was excitement. Everything now is people wanting in the now, in the moment. And actually, I've even built my company up to be a multi-million-pound company. And my God, I was never so miserable. It was actually, once I built it to multi-million-pound level, I kind of had an awakening because I thought, Jesus, I've never been more miserable, but this is everything I thought I wanted. Do you know what? As every staff member came in, I thought, okay, I've now got 27 headaches. Very negative way of looking at it, Colin. But, that was it. But there was something about, back in the time. And I think, you don't need to be an expert to realise that we have a social problem as a society, don't we?
Well, it's just, to be honest, I mean, I don't know if it'll ever get any different now, but I think it's gone past. People's got this obsession with money. And I mean, I see it every day. I see it where I live. I see people that's retired and they're still trying to make money doing things. I mean, I live on a caravan site in a chalet, and I see it on here all the time where people's got, they've got enough money to live on. They've got probably more than enough money to live on, but they're still wanting. It's like they're obsessed with money. When I've gone opposite way now, and it's like, as long as I've got enough to live on, that's direction I've gone. And to be honest, I'm quite content now. And you've only got to look, really. You've only got to look at your rich stars, your pop stars, your footballers. They've got that much money and a lot of them are manic depressives,
Well, it's definitely the root of all evil. It is. It was. That's.
I talk about it in my book quite a bit about money, and I always put money is the most evil thing in the world. I mean, if it weren't for money, you won't be having sex trafficking, you won't be having prostitution, you won't be having gambling and all these sort of things. So your money is the main. It's got to be.
I guess being devil's advocate here. If I go back to 40 years ago, money was still there.
Yeah.
You think it's the attitudes changing to,
I think it's a society where all your big companies, they wanted to sell all the time. I know, you've got your Amazon, your eBays, and all these other companies, your Temu and all these, they're just wanting to sell all the time. And I don't know if anybody else does it. I'm presuming they do. You buy stuff you don't actually need. You'll see.
Well, you do. We live in a fast consumer society where it's all about, getting as much as possible. And the irony of it is, if I ask myself, what is my relationship with money? I probably have because of the traumas that happened to me in my 20s and the fact that I've built up money and then been at moments in my life where I've had no money and then nearly lost it all. I think I've got this kind of wanting to stockpile mentality. I don't know what it is now. I'm sort of, with the pandemic has probably scarred me a lot as well. But, I'm at a really interesting crossroads of my life now where actually the industry that I've worked in, recruitment for all these years, it's all about money. It just evolves around making deals and money. And, I've had to really... it's an opposite world to mediumship. I know that in the evenings, I want to be connecting to the spirit world, but all through the day, I've been in the land and the world of the ego. It's all about prestige, status. I work in law. It's about, I'm this lawyer and I do this and I bill this much. And it's, but I kind of, that what makes me really good at the job I do is the fact that I kind of use my psychic skills without knowing it. I just feel my way through. So, the book mentions about hardship and bullying and things like that. And so sort of walk me through, how you navigated your childhood and what that looked like. Because I want to find out about the journey that led to you, Colin, becoming the stripper, quite frankly.
We'll be right back.
Hello there, Soul Sink. It's me. I interrupt this episode for just a moment to ask if you find this podcast at all helpful, please leave a review on the platform where you listen to them. It helps other people to find it and it means the world to me. Now enjoy your episode.
The reason I become a stripper was actually it wasn't something I'd ever dreamt of doing. To me, what happened were I used to have my own gym, and of course several lads come in. And one particular lad come into my gym one day, and he says, "Somebody's advertising for strippers at Sheffield. You fancy going?" And I says, "I don't think so." weren't part of my plan at all. That, and every day he come in.
Was you confident enough from going to the gym to even sort of entertain it, or was you being dragged, kicking and screaming, so to speak?
Well, I kept refusing. I kept saying no, that's not for me. That's not. But the lad that come in, it was his dream to be a stripper, but it weren't mine at all. And
why was it his dream? Was it because of the being an being almost like a desirable, or what is it about?
Yeah, I think it were probably with him. But he kept on at me. At the time I was married, and I said to my wife, I says, he keeps coming in and asking me about this stripping. She says, "Well, why don't you just go and have a look?" And I says, "Well, it's not really my cup of tea. I can't see me stripping," So she says, "Well, just go with him, just as a company." So when he come in, I says, "All right, we'll go." And it were a man at Sheffield, and he wanted to make a strip group, like Full Monty.
Oh my goodness! Are you joining a band, so to speak?
Yeah, Real Monty. I mean, Real Monty's from Sheffield, so I says, "Go on, I'll go with you." So we went up Sheffield and we met at this, I can't remember where we met actually. It might have been in a pub or something. And then this bloke said he was going to finance it all. He got all these big plans, all money he was going to sort out. So we all agreed. There were only 5 turned up actually. So we all agreed. And at the time I got my own gym. So we agreed to meet at my gym the week after. So the week after, we all met at the gym, but who didn't turn up? The man that were financing it all, whose idea it were, and all this. So we all thought, well, that's it, no point in going ahead with it. But one of the other lads, he's a bit, he's good with chat, put it that way. And he says, well, why don't we do it on his own? So we did. And really, he organised more or less everything, you know what I mean? And he said he got a manager who managed all the strippers in Sheffield, Prime Car, they called it. And he says, it's coming to watch us. So we actually rehearsed in a scout hut. And we got this lady to come that did all choreography. So we did it, and we're all, and he come and he says, right, yeah, he says, oh, it's pretty good. He says, I'll see if I can get you a venue. But the thing is with stripping, if you're in a group stripping, all your moves have to be the same. If you're doing that...
Oh, you have to rehearse the dance.
Yeah, so it's all dance and rehearsing and everything. If you're doing an individual strip, then there's no rehearsing. You do it as it comes to your mind. So, you're dancing about and tormenting women and in some cases.
How does you get put in this group? How are you feeling, sort of, I can imagine maybe, you would feel perhaps more comfortable with the fact that you're not the only one, first of all. But I myself couldn't imagine ever potentially doing that. Without sounding crass about this, is it sort of down to the underwear, then we politely stop, or?
Well, I was totally embarrassed, to be honest. I mean, and I just could never see it happening, but it did. And the funny thing were, the lad that convinced me to do it in the first place, 2 days before his first show in Porcatel at Rotherham, it were an Ann Summers party, and it were upstairs, and there must have been, 30 or 40 women there. And 2 days before we did his first show, he backed out.
I can imagine. Well, do you know what? The fact you still went ahead with it as well.
Well, we got all uniforms. We got everything was velcroed. I mean, I don't know if you know about stripping, but your trousers are velcroed because when you take them off, you rip them off.
Oh, so yes, I suppose so. Yes,
yeah,
because
so
the way I take my trousers off at the end of the day, it was certainly not flattering. I'm not, so I understand that. Yes.
So all this were organised. We got all uniforms for full Monty. Take your hat off, Tom Jones, and all that. So everything were organised, and like I said, this guy backed out 2 days before, so we had to rush then and reorganise some dancing. It weren't difficult, but we did do it, sort of thing. And show went ahead, and we did.
I bet if you smoked, you were having a good few fags backstage. First of all, I can imagine you were going through a 20 deck in no time at all.
The bloke that actually manages, he was a drag artist, Dave. His stage name was Penny Change, and he'd done it for years and years. And he got good hair for a bloke, actually. He got long blonde hair, and he sort of did drag act, and then when introducing us like this, and two of us did.
Of course, there was a drag queen involved. Of course, yes.
Yeah. And then we had Mark Denham, who was from Real Monty. They once had a program on TV. I don't know if you ever watched it.
Oh, I love that film. No, that was
you're thinking at Full Monty. There were a group in Sheffield. They called them Real Monty.
The Real Monty.
The Real Monty. And a few years ago, they had a thing on TV with they showed them, doing stripping and that. And one of them come that night, and he stood in with us. I think it was just a bit of encouragement, really, because he was sort of professional outside of what it was our first time. But it really went down well that night. much to my surprise and everybody else's, it went really well. And then this guy who dropped out, when he found out it went really well, he wanted to come back.
Oh, of course he did, yes, cap in hand. And was he accepted gracefully or what?
No. He come in and he says, I'm back in. I says, I don't think you are. I says, you let us down 2 days before. I said, you can't just jump back in.
Well, yeah, especially the fact that you're stripping, the fact if it, it's not like any other business enterprise where he may have let you down. He let you down. The choreography had to change. Yeah, I'll get that. The band or the group is now formed. I imagine it was Colin.
Yeah, so it was his dream, but it ended up as my dream, really. Well, I never wanted to do it. But I sort of got drawn in, and that's how it occurred. So then we started getting a few more shows. A few of them were, for what they call it, charity.
Oh, you were doing it for free.
I couldn't think of a word then, charity. And we actually did one at Barnsley with Chrissy Rock of Benidorm. I don't know if you're aware of.
Yes.
Blonde hair. She did a show with us at Barnsley, and I've got to say, she was the funniest woman I've ever seen. She had everybody in stitches. She was really good from beginning to end. Yeah, so we started doing more and more shows, and then eventually we got invited to do a show with a Japanese guy. And Dave, who was manager at the time, Penny Change, he got us this, he organised it, and it was a guy that come from Japan. And he was told, he was doing a TV show for Japan, it was called Homestay, where he come to this country and then he stopped with somebody in this country, and they told him he was playing football with Sheffield Wednesday. Little did he know, he was doing a strip show with us. So... At first, it was, oh, no. But they filmed him all week. He stopped with one at Lads, and then we did a show at Dog and Partridge at Sheffield, bit of a rough place where it were like, and show went really well. And then 12 months later, we got invited back to Japan for a week, a strip group, and to Dave, who was drag queen like. We all went to Japan.
God, you all going stripping with the drag queen going international. I can only imagine the fun that was had on that aircraft ride.
Yeah. So we got invited to Japan, and we didn't get a lot of time to dust things ourselves because it was all organised. They were there with bloody film cameras all the time, and they wanted to film this and that and other. And then they actually set something up downstairs in a building, and they got joiners in, and they made a stage. There were even ladies joiners there, and they made a stage for us. We in a day, and then that night we did a show, and there were 400 Japanese women there.
Do you know what? I'm quite surprised by that, because Japan is a country but I did go to a couple of times in my cabin crew days for Virgin Atlantic, but I only had 2 days there at a time, but I did cram a lot in. But the Japanese culture is one of, a lot of respect and this, that, and the other. But even I have a story about that, because when we used to go to the crew hotel, there used to be this hotel called the Happy Santa Hotel. And I used to think, what the hell is this? And I don't know where they used to put us in Japan. But that hotel was paid by the hour. And apparently there is this sort of under society where there's, that's explored in different ways, so to speak.
Right, yeah. Well, what it were, we did this show. There were 400 women there. They couldn't advertise it. Although there were 400 women there, they couldn't advertise it. And there were no drinks, no alcohol allowed. And they built this stage, and we did show there that night. And it was really fabulous, really good atmosphere. But there were no drinks, but we couldn't go any further than a G-string.
Oh, so they've sort of put provisions in there, haven't they?
Yeah.
It's a very different way of doing it. Because I can imagine in the UK, there's lots of drinks, there's lots of rowdiness, there's wine flying everywhere, I imagine. But in Japan, it's very underground, because even there is seediness to Japan. There is.
Yeah.
But, well, I keep wanting to go back to Japan, and I've had the trip booked twice, but I didn't feel that I could have long enough off from my business to go there. But it's actually where I want to go for my 40th.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough. But how did it feel? I imagine it felt empowering. I imagine it was building confidence. But how was it making you feel on the inside? How was your life how was you feeling about all of this? And
I loved it, to be honest. I mean, from not wanting to do it to doing it, there was a bit of ego there. There was a bit of wanting to do it then, and we did shows in Liverpool and Newcastle and all over, and it were a buzz. It were a buzz. I've got to say, it were a buzz. Adrenaline. Now, anybody that says I couldn't do it like I did, you don't actually. You can liken it actually to mediumship, because you go into an altered state. You can't help it. So when you're going on stage, you've got all your gear on. I used to have leather gear. Got all my leather gear on and what have you. You got adrenaline kicked in, and then your mind you were focused on what you were doing then. So you didn't look at anybody when you went out there. You didn't look at anybody. You just sort of did it, what you're doing, in an altered state. So probably if you were in your own state of mind, you wouldn't do it. But because you're there on spot, adrenaline's going, you're going out, you know what you're doing. It was quite easy.
Well, I imagine there's a hell of a lot of dopamine flying around, as you go through that experience as well, because you've got people, it's, screaming at you and all sorts of reactions.
Oh, yeah, you get comments and all sorts, but you just like pull a funny face,
Well, indeed.
But then you're off, you get dressed and you've gone, because most spots were, if you did an individual spot, I went to Newcastle a few times, and we used to do gay bars in Newcastle. There were Rockies and Rock House and this, and all gay bars were sort of in a certain area. So I did them a few times up there, but it was like 2 hours travelling for a 15-minute spot. You know what I mean? So it was a lot of travelling, but and you didn't make much money out of it, to be honest. To make a lot of money out of it, some professional, like Real Monty, they were doing shows, maybe 4 or 5 times a week. So they did make a bit of money, but not a lot. Nobody were going to get rich out of stripping, to be honest with you. And by the time you've paid for things, your fuel and, your outfits and everything else, it's not a well-paid sort of job, not what you think.
Mm-hmm.
But it was fun of doing it, and adrenaline rush, and doing something that you think you'd never do.
Yes.
So yeah, it was part of my life which I thought I'd never do.
I can imagine. Well,
you don't just wake up and think I'm going to be a stripper, but it's happened, and I've got to say I'm glad it did, because it's another pathway, isn't it? It's another. Some people don't know all through their life. I can say I've done a lot of stuff.
Well, there's something in that, isn't there? Because, I know the book mentions things like you went through addiction and some darker chapters. And I often, and I think from reflection now, because of how much I've been through, even with things like addiction, psychosis, loads of struggles in my 20s and even in recent times. But I now look back and think that knowing that my path is to be a medium and fully believing and knowing that that's my soul's journey, I feel that I went through that to get that rich tapestry of,
that's right, that's right.
Yeah, and that becomes part of your fabric, doesn't it?
I've been in mediumship maybe 20 years now, but I've struggled with mediumship from day one, because I went to classes and awareness classes, and some people get it like that. Well, I never did. And many a times I thought, I'm just not getting this, and I was expecting other things to happen. And it's took me a long time now. It took me a long time, and I realised why it's took me a long time. Because to be a medium, right, you've got to have empathy with someone. You've got to understand someone. And I was fixed up, and I mean, I write about it in me, but I was fixed up, and there weren't a lot of feelings when I was a kid. There weren't a lot of love I don't feel. And I was fixed up, and I was like a block of wood, to be honest. You know, I'd not lost anybody at the time. I didn't have feelings for out, you know. So I liken myself to a block of wood. And I've had to learn through a lot of hardship and things to gain feelings, emotions, and all that sort of thing. Because how can I, with no feelings, expect to give someone that's lost a child any emotion or empathy if I don't know it myself? Do you understand what I'm saying with that? So I do write about this in book, because I think I've struggled, because my first years and years I've had to learn feelings and emotions and all that sort of thing. Like I said, I've seen a lot of mediums, and I look in the mediums and they're getting a message. I don't look at messages as be all and end all and everything. Me, I don't work rostrums. Very rare I do private sittings. I'm more interested in my own journey, building my own, my own journey and what have you than standing up. And I see a lot of mediums on churches now. And once again, this is in my book, because I feel strongly that a lot of mediums now are really underdeveloped on churches. And the last maybe 6 or 7 I've seen, they haven't proved life after death at all. You know what I mean? I don't know if you've seen any of that.
Well, I think that my granddad was a medium who went to churches, and unfortunately I never got to see him actually demonstrate. But I think churches are struggling in a lot of ways.
Well, definitely.
And they're not getting the caliber of mediums, but I don't think they're also, a lot of them are not, getting enough people through the door. I think the religion is losing momentum. I think society's changing. I don't think it's all on the religion, but I feel that when I went to spiritualist churches prior to my awakening and all the trauma that I went through, when I went to spiritualist churches, I never felt that it proved to me life after death. Not that I felt that was its sole purpose, but I was going there for that. I wanted that because I wanted my granddad to come through. That's why I kept going to them. And even when I had readings, I never felt that my granddad was really coming through, because I felt that the messages were clouded and it just didn't feel right to me. Yeah. So I almost had to go in search of the spirit world. And what led it up happening to me is I then started wanting the proof. I want proof of the spirit world, and no other medium was giving it to me. And then I went, and one day someone did give me a message, and then I found myself giving messages. And then what became the proof for me was the fact that I was doing it. Then I went through a phase of thinking, well, that person must be just, maybe they're just saying yes or whatever.
I think we've all been there, haven't we?
Yeah, I thought maybe they're just being kind to me, I don't know. But it's interesting. So you was explaining about, when you started developing your mediumship, you felt like a block of wood, as you described there. But what was your life like, at that time of you trying to develop? Because what drew you to it? Because to go through addiction, I now know that addiction to me was because I was, my soul was yearning out for understanding, and because I was living a life that just wasn't. I needed to understand what life was all about, and that was what kind of drew me into mediumship. I'll go down a million rabbit holes, but to ask you the question, what was life like? What drew you into it?
Basically, my life was just like anybody else's. Drinking, splitting up with my ex-wife. I got my gym. I went bankrupt. And my life was a mess, to be honest. I was up to neck in debt, mainly because of my gym, because I borrowed money for equipment. When you're in debt, nobody wants to help you. Banks,
Yeah.
I mean, I went to the bank and I says, look, I'm struggling here. Can I lower my payments? No, you can't do that. You think, well, I says, well, it's up to you. I says, you're not going to get any money back then. And I owed them £12,000. And rather than lower my payments, they'd rather lose £12,000, which they did, because I went bankrupt.
Oh, banks are a nightmare. They're only interested in you when you're making money. And even when you're making money, they're not of any help to you.
No.
I have a bank manager.
Council was the same. I went down, I says, look, can you lower me rates on building? A bloke that I rented my gym off, I mean, he was good and he helped me out and he deferred me payments and stuff, but I just couldn't make the money. And plus then I was living on my credit cards. So then I was getting more and more in debt and I just ended up saying, I just shut doors one day and I said, that's it. So I had a marriage breakdown after that, and a lot of things I'm not proud about because it were all bad decisions on my part, really. But we all do the same. You don't realise at the time. And then you go into a survival mode where, and all that. So then what got me into spiritualism, really, it was, I used to have a computer with tower and camera were on top, a little bloody, and I used to go on, they called it Face Party.
Yes, I remember that website.
Yeah, you remember Face Party?
Yeah, that was the very, very first kind of Facebooky type thing, but it was exciting then, wasn't it?
It was better, yeah.
It was better.
There was something called Look It's Me. I was on both of them. So I used to chat to people. And I started chatting with a woman from Hull. We're still friends to this day, to be honest. I mean, I never see her, but, I'll text every so often. And she did tarot cards. And she was brilliant with tarot cards, but she never did it to make money at all. She just did it with her friends and that, but she was really good. And I'd never heard of spiritualism, spiritualist churches. I never heard of anything to do with spiritualism. And then she told me she used to go to a church in Hull. And then she used to go to an awareness thing. So she invited me to go, and I went a few times, and it was really good. And that was my introduction, really, because then back up in Yorkshire, where I was from, I'd never even heard of the spiritualist church, believe it or not. And then when I looked them up, there's 16 in that area, Doncaster, Sheffield, Barnsley and Rotherham, and then there's Castleford, there's not that far, and Pontypridd. So there's a lot of churches. So I started going, and I used to be there 7 days a week at different ones, different awareness classes, and I struggled. I really struggled. I couldn't get no. I said, I'm not getting no to no. So I was a nightmare at first. But then I met a woman at church, and we ended up together for 10 years. And she was a medium at Rotherham's, and she was a really good medium. But she'd had it since a child, and I think she got it quite easy. And I used to ask her questions, what do you see and what do you hear and what, and she could never really answer. And because I was with her, then I was more involved with churches, and then I started going to Stansted. I mean, I've been going to Stansted years. I've been 26 times maybe over years. And I met a guy there, you know him as well as I do, Colin Bray. And I love Colin. To be honest, I mean, that bloke, he don't know it, has inspired me since I met him, because his lectures were second to none, I thought. And I could hear it, I could listen to his lectures time and time again and do the same lectures. But I was just fascinated at, his knowledge and everything. So like I say, I've been to college loads and loads of times, but I've got to say with college, when I first went, it was a lot, I've got to say, better energy, better atmosphere. I used to sit in the library. I used to go to the library at night, and I'd sit there. Everybody else were in bed, and I'd be at the library at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night, pitch black, sitting in there. And I used to get a right buzz out of it. I mean, I could feel things. I could see snowstorms. And sometimes I used to walk out and I'd look back and I'd be, got to get out of here because it was pitch black, do you know what I mean? And then you're walking up, you're being a stance, and I was walking up corridors and that, and it was, ooh. So it was very eerie, but there was that atmosphere about it. Now, the int now, I don't know why, they just didn't that same atmosphere, but I just love going. You can't even sit in rooms at night now. At 9 o'clock, you can't go in. But that's their rules now. You have to stick to them. But people always spoil things, don't they? I think that's why.
Well, they do spoil things. I think the college, unfortunately, I was never there in what sounds like the golden era. I came in, I think, just as it was the wheels were starting to come off. And it's a shame, really, because, love is all that matters. And that place, what it can do for people, it isn't just about the classroom sessions. It's about the whole energy of it, spending time with the other students. There is something different. And I have to admit, the last couple of times I've went, I've just thought, there's something energetically that just doesn't feel the same to me.
No, it's not same at all. Not same. But, I mean, I'm booked twice this year, like I said. I can't help but go. And I said I weren't going anymore 2 years ago. They had all them politics and all that. All my favourite tutors left,
Well, I think so many great tutors left, actually. And so many of them have actually been on this podcast, interestingly enough.
The same tutors all the time, so we know each other. As soon as you got there, they welcome you, they know your name. You always had a laugh with them and everything else. And then it sort of changed, bump like that. So I said I weren't going no more, but I thought to myself, well, I'm cutting my own throat because I like going. And I like sitting in gardens. You've been, what gardens are like. And
I'm confident, Colin, it's going to go back in eventually to the ways of the old. I think that change is coming. I feel change is on the horizon with the college because I feel the light needs to be put back into it, quite frankly.
Yeah, well...
But, it's important that I feel very much the same as you. I'm still going to go because I don't want it to hinder my... the experience for me, but, it definitely needs to change. I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned that, in the book, your spirit helpers helped to inspire the book. How did they work with you on this?
I felt, to be honest, I never intended writing a book. I saw this desk. You can't see it, but there's a writing desk here. And I saw it on Facebook Marketplace, and it was £10, and it was an hour away in Grimsby. And it's old-fashioned type, wood, and it's really heavy. And I thought, that's not bad for £10. So, I text them and says, is it still available? Yes. Can I come and look? And I went and I says, yes, I'll have it straight away. So I fetched it back. I struggled to even get it in here because I was on my own, and it's really heavy, although it's not that big. Anyway, I got it planted here, and then I loved it. I just loved it. It's got a few dints and cracks and things.
Character, I think we call that.
Yeah, and I thought, I started writing. And first day, I wrote 10 pages. And it went from there. And as I was writing, I think everything in life is spirit. A lot of stuff's spirit, spirit's there. So with music, art, these sort of things. And I felt like I was writing, and I was writing before it would come in thinking. So it was strange. I'm not going to say it was automatic writing, but as I'm writing, stuff was coming into my head. So I do feel like it was spirit. And I think spirit's, I've got this opinion that spirit will always put you where you needed to be. Now, I'm not doing, since I moved to Mablethorpe, I don't do anything The church, they're not churches, to be honest, but the places I've been around here, I'm not impressed with. I did a few readings for a shop in village. So I weren't doing nothing at all. So I'm out. So I'm thinking that's spirit, because I've got to say, take Colin Bray, who I just mentioned, years and years ago, I had a spiritual assessment of him. In fact, I had two, one that were year and then year after, and they were fabulous readings. He turned around and he says, I think you'll write something. And I thought, I don't think so. I can't spell. I was rubbish at school. I weren't interested in school. I thought, I'll never write. No. Well, I have done, so he were right. And that was 20 years ago. So, but I've got to say, my book's not perfect. And
well, Colin, I'll say, I admire anyone who writes a book, because I've said to myself so many times, I have to write my life story, because it'd just be unbelievably interesting, I feel anyway.
Yeah.
A definite page turner. But I just couldn't imagine it. So I have, so much respect for anyone that does, because, even it's not just about writing the book. It's especially when it's your own story, I imagine it's quite healing, but I imagine, you're going back into some of the things that are not the nicer parts of life that you don't maybe want to bring up to the surface. No. But I imagine by writing it, there's a release that happens. I imagine.
Actually, somebody asked me the other day. I mean, I'm trying to get. In fact, they're putting a bit in where I used to come from, Yorkshire. I got in touch with local paper, and they're putting a bit in for me.
A spread.
A spread, yeah. And he was.
I think we call that in the newspaper business, Colin. Yeah.
So he was asking me a lot of questions and that, and I can't remember where I'm going with this now. But,
don't worry. Look, I think your story is amazing. And honestly, we've only just scratched the surface, because we're never going to get all of your story into this. But, I know that you're such a beautiful soul, and your story, as soon as I even saw the book, Colin, I just thought to myself, this just seems like my sort of read.
You just saw a stiffer up front.
Well, Colin, do you know what I've learned? Funnily enough, and I think there's a bit of I've learned not to judge a book by its cover, but your book, Colin, I was making a few judgments, I'll tell you that. Look, it's lovely to have you, honestly, onto the Soul Sync. And your book, if you do want to find out more, go to the show notes where you can click on the link and obviously find out more about the memoirs of a stripper's journey to a healing medium. Colin, leave us on a final thought today then. How do you want to close the episode?
Right. I want to say to people, work on your own journey, and try to ignore everything right. Because I found peace in my life, and keep away from dramas and arguments and family squabbles, and just turn other cheek and say, I'm not getting involved with this. Because when you look back at things in your life, all dramas, and you think, oh, what point in it? Do you understand what I'm saying? What point in that drama? Why did I not give an opinion and just, you're better off just trying to lead your own life. I mean, we all see now that country's in a right mess, and there's stuff on media and it bombards you. And I think one of the worst things that's ever happened is this social media thing, because everything's brainwashing, don't you feel?
I think we get overstimulation
every day, yeah. And if you didn't put your telly on, or you didn't put your phone on, and you just lived your life, you wouldn't even think about a lot of stuff. But
do you know what? I actually think if you was to cut yourself off from technology for a period of time, you could really manifest the life that you want, because I feel that you get so distracted now with social media. You're on your phone, you're scrolling, you're getting fed this. It's making you, perhaps not feel good. And what you've got to understand is everything is energy. Everything is energy. And when you're watching something that, is not positive or that carries a frequency. And I feel that's going into you. So I really feel that you have to be protective of your energy. I feel that is one of the biggest life lessons I've ever learned. And even in the absolute eye of the storm, and I've been through many of them in recent times, the ability to just protect your energy and be very aware of that, and it's so easy to have your energy drained. And I feel that I'm becoming very aware of that and content and what I'm allowing to enter my energy. You look absolutely shocked, Colin, like I've just given you the the biggest answer of life. I thought I'd lost you. I've obviously shocked you. Colin, honestly, my dear, it has been a lovely delight to have you onto the Soul Sync, and thank you for coming on and sharing a bit of your story.
I find, my last point,
go on.
I get really frustrated with people that are not spiritual minded, such as us. And I feel like I just want to tell them, they seem to be on a different vibration. Whether they are or not, I feel that they're on a low vibration. I used to be a drinker. I've not really done drugs. I did steroids when I was bodybuilding and stuff like that. You know what I mean? But I feel like I'm on a different vibration to a lot of people.
But you are on a different vibration.
I've turned into an hermit. I don't like going out because you see people that are ignorant. They're not very nice, and all this and that. Sometimes I don't want to go out fruit, do I? I'd rather be in here in my peace. No, you can't.
I think
tell
it's
that.
like that for a lot of sensitive people, Colin, because you are on a different frequency, because so many people are just in the land of the ego and the, scarcity mindset and always chasing the next thing. You are on a different frequency, and that's why you're choosing to protect your energy. I spend a lot of time at home, and if anything, I need to get out there and stop being so much the hermit, because but I love just coming home to the peace.
Yeah. Well, I'm retired, so I don't have to go out. I go to the gym sometimes, and I've just got myself an allotment, so. But I can't stand in a supermarket. I don't want to be out in crowds, and because it's a strange thing to say, but people get on my nerves.
No, I can very much understand that, and I think that's not going to be lost on a lot of the people. But listen to this, honestly, I think you're going to have a lot of people that probably agree with you there. So thank you. Well, wasn't that an interesting conversation? A couple of side notes I wanted to just tell you about. My diaries open up quite widely for mediumship due to me selling my business. So if you do want to book a reading, whether that be psychic, mediumship, or perhaps both, just go to jasonpaulmedium.com, where you can just book directly into my diary now. I've just got all that plumbed in, very exciting. Also, on my website, you can sign up to my monthly newsletter, where you can become my pen pal. Until next time, lots of love.